I spoke earlier about how Ballywalter snuck up on me out of nowhere and blew me away. And I was lucky enough to experience that twice this week in the cinema, but it also happened with our movie of the week, The Creator. And for what it's worth, I'm stopping the clock to discuss this in depth, but I actually probably enjoyed Ballywalter more. I just have more to say on this. The Creator sees director Gareth Edwards team up again with his Rogue One collaborator Chris Weitz to give us essentially Terminator meets Avatar with a bit of Apocalypse Now thrown in for the crack. It preys largely on people's fears about AI, which, when you consider the script has been in development since 2019, could not have been any more perfectly timed. We begin in a world where AI has become an ingratiated part of day-to-day life. The USA obviously use this, of course, to help with their defense and law enforcement, and as such, arms them to the gills, which ends in a Skynet-style nuclear disaster happening in LA. Cut to the future, and the Western world has essentially rebuilt and all but eradicated AI, all aside from what's called New Asia in the movie, who have tried a different tack with the technology and treated them as equals. Shockingly, this has led to dramatically different results to America, where AI now lives in unison and in peace with humans. Unable to recognize this distinction, and their approach may have been the problem to begin with, America still sees AI as a lingering threat and wages war in the region. It's a movie where the US Army, like Avatar, is very much the villain here. On the face of it, and even in the trailers, to me, anyway, this seems like a generic futuristic blockbuster. However, once you experience that setup, it's immediately apparent to you that something more ambitious and special is happening here. And there's a swagger and a confidence in how Edwards visually tells the story that lets you know this is a cut above your usual big budget summer blockbuster. Even right down to the beautiful title cards that break up the story into chapters throughout. There's a stamp of quality here that reminds me a lot of Rogue One, that from the word go, you knew wasn't going to be either a silly or garbage Star Wars movie. Although there is a large focus on the tech throughout, a lot of that is told visually and clearly, meaning that you understand the world implicitly and it doesn't have to spend too much time explaining how everything works, moving out of the way more so the script can instead choose to focus on the characters and the relationships that will have you buy in emotionally, which I, for one, did. In the lead, you've got John David Washington, who is an excellent actor who ticks the boxes required, but he's someone that reminds me a lot of Brad Pitt in that while he can be fine doing a kind of generic all-American leading man hero, he comes into his own when he has a bit of friction or some bite to work with. Like his last blockbuster, Tenet, that's not really the case here, despite the character having a defined arc to work with. It doesn't spoil the movie by any means. It just means that his performance carries rather than elevates the movie. Since it's Ryder Cup weekend, we'll say that he's a par rather than a birdie or an eagle. Never mind though, because the movie does sparkle whenever child actor Madeleine Yuna-Voice is on screen. It's her feature debut, having effectively being cast off the street, and she's an absolute revelation and brings an emotional core that's so crucial to this film working. As I watched, strange as it may sound, the main thing that came to my mind with Voice's character was E.T., so I wasn't surprised to hear Edward cite that as another inspiration, but it works for so many of the same reasons that E.T. did. If E.T. was in a Terminator, Avatar, and Apocalypse Now movie mashed together. Sounds weird. That's what this is. And when you watch it, you're like, oh yeah, it kind of makes sense. And it really, really works. The tone and how it's balanced too is dead on. On the face of it, this may sound heavy and morose, but the movie moves at such a breathtaking pace while also allowing room for occasional levity. So you're never actually left to sit in the misery, but the stakes are always with you at all times. It reminds me so much of Rogue One in that respect. You carry the emotional weight, but the movie is never weighed down by it either. And like Rogue One, the movie is absolutely ruthless when it needs to be. The Creator punched way above his weight and way above its weight and was such a surprise. It's one of the most thrilling movies of 2023 for me, and an absolute statement by Gareth Edwards that he's one of the safest pair of hands with a big time blockbuster today. That's The Creator. It's in cinemas now, and I recommend you see it in cinemas too.